The air in de Vyd Miller's levying room was thick with the acrid stench of charred fabric, a smell that clawed at his throat and burned his eyes. He knelt on the hardwood floor, trembling hands clutching the scorched remnants of his son's military uniform. The fabric, blackened and crumbling, was still warm, as if it carried the heat of the betrayal that had reduced it to ashes. This wasn't just cloth, it was the embodiment of his son Ethan's sacrifice, a Marine who had worn it through 3 tours, across deserts scarred by war, its cuffs still dusted with sand from a life cut short. 2 days before Ethan's funeral, this uniform, lovingly preserved in a cedar chest on the porch, had been burned by the HOA president, Karen Whitaker, who called it clutter and smirked as she walked away. But de Vyd had something stronger than her rules, a nation's voice, ready to roar. De Vyd's hands shook as he traced the melted patches, each one a story of Ethan's courage, bullet holes sewn shut, insignia that had gleamed under foreign suns. He'd placed the chest on the porch to clear space in the house, overwhelmed by funeral preparations. The porch was quiet, shaded, safer, so he thought. Now only ashes remained, trailing from the porch to the flower bed like a wound in the earth. Karen's voice still echoed in his mind, sharp and unyielding. "We gave warnings. Porch items are trash." She'd paused just long enough to flash a smile, cold and triumphant, before striding away. De Vyd had stumbled after her, screaming her name into the suffocating silence of the neighborhood, but her screen door slammed shut like a gavel. He collapsed onto the couch, clutching the fragments, his breath shallow, his world unraveling. Outside, a shadow moved. His neighbor, Mark, crossed the lawn, pale and clutching his phone like a lifeline. "I got it," Mark whispered. Her words, her smile, everything. He held out the phone. The Vyd paused on Karen's smirk, her voice frozen mid-sentence. "Trash." De Vyd stared, unblinking, the weight of her indifference sinking in. "I thought it was safe," he murmured, his voice barely audible. Mark nodded, but no words could bridge the chasm of de Vyd's grief. The evidence was real, but de Vyd knew it wouldn't be enough, not yet. Ethan had died 3 weeks ago in a brutal ambush in a remote Afghan valley, just months shy of coming home. At 25, he was a staff sergeant, a leader whose men trusted him with their lives. De Vyd had flown to the base himself, refusing a courier, needing to touch the flag-draped casket, to bring his boy home. Every detail of the funeral was his to choose: the casket, the music, the chapel. Above all, Ethan's uniform. Not some store-bought replica, but the real one, worn through war, smelling of sweat and courage. De Vyd had laid it in the chest, thinking it was safe for a few hours. Then it was gone. At the police station, de Vyd stood with the remnants in a sealed bag, his voice breaking. "She'd burned his uniform. How is that not a crime?" The officer shifted uncomfortably. "HOA rules are private property matters. We can't intervene unless it's criminal, and this doesn't qualify." De Vyd's heart sank. At the HOA office, a sterile beige building reeking of citrus air freshener, he faced 2 board members who weren't Karen. He poured out his story, the uniform's sanctity, Ethan's sacrifice. They barely blinked, one tapping a binder. "Section 12B prohibits porch storage. The rule applies regardless of contents." De Vyd left, the weight in his chest no longer just grief but something colder: betrayal. The next morning, his phone rang. It was Sarah, Ethan's older sister, her voice a blade of fury. "I saw the video. They destroyed federal property. That uniform was government issued. HOA rules don't trump that." She'd already contacted the Veterans Legal Alliance and the State Bar's Military Rights Committee, and emailed every local news outlet. "They thought they could crush you, Dad, but they picked the wrong family." By noon, de Vyd's phone buzzed relentlessly. Sarah's network: lawyers, veterans, journalists had ignited a firestorm. A veterans group on social media shared the story, and it spread like wildfire. By afternoon, a news van parked outside de Vyd's house, followed by 2 more. Reporters didn't want soundbites, they wanted the truth. De VYD told it, voice low, each word heavy with pain. As dusk settled, his phone rang. Agina military area code. Mr. Miller, this is Captain Reynolds, Marine Corps Public Affairs. We're sending an honor guard for Ethan's funeral, full ceremonial presence. We'll also make a public statement about the sanctity of his service. You're not alone. De VYD's throat tightened, but for the first time, he felt a flicker of steadiness. He wasn't carrying this alone anymore. The funeral dawned under gray skies, the air thick with purpose. De VYD stood outside the chapel, back straight, hands clasped, hiding the tremor inside. Ethan lay in a new uniform, rushed overnight by the Marines, every medal pinned with reverence. A colonel's note read, "No one dishonors our own." 2 Marines flanked the casket, their presence a silent vow. Ethan was theirs, and they would protect his honor. Beyond the chapel gates, hundreds gathered, veterans in dress blues, soldiers in silence, families with flags, children with signs reading, "Honor is not trash." De VYD's knees nearly buckled, but he walked forward, nodding to the crowd. Bagpipes wailed, and 6 pallbearers followed. The silence was deafening, 1,000 voices speaking without sound. Then he saw her, Karen Whitaker, parked across the street in her white sedan, sunglasses hiding her eyes, mouth tight. She didn't step out, just watched, engine idling. A young reporter spotted her, badge glinting as he crossed the lawn, mic in hand. Karen's head jerked, her fingers fumbling for the gearshift. As the reporter neared, her car lurched forward, speeding away, Leah vying only exhaust and cowardice. De VYD felt it then, not peace, but vindication. Her retreat was his triumph, truth laid bare before the world. Days later, the Veterans Congressional Council filed a class action suit against the HOA, exposing Karen's reign of petty tyranny, fining veterans, harassing families, misusing funds. Board members resigned, prosecutors circled, and Karen's authority crumbled. But the story's heart was elsewhere. A photo of de VYD at the chapel, hand on Ethan's casket, went viral with the caption, "They burned his son's uniform. He stood anyway." Letters poured in, thousands from veterans, widows, strangers, sharing stories of silenced sacrifices. De VYD didn't retreat into grief. He spoke at schools, bases, community centers, a father bearing witness. "They can burn your uniform, but if we remember, you didn't die in vain." A month later, Karen withdrew from HOA elections, her house sold, her presence erased. De VYD planted a white rose where the chest had burned, tending it Dahlia quiet vow. A year later, the town held a grassroots memorial. A glass case held a restored Marine uniform, crafted by veterans and a seamstress, every detail perfect. De VYD spoke, voice warm with love and fury. "This isn't about destruction. It's about rebuilding. No policy gave Ethan his worth. We did." The crowd's applause was a pulse of truth. Weeks later, a letter arrived from a boy in Ohio, Caleb, 23, whose brother died in service. "You gave me permission to say his name again," he wrote. De VYD cried, not from grief, but from something warmer. Ethan lived on it in ash, but in every voice that refused to stay silent, in every heart that chose to stand. And in that, de VYD found peace.